Well, hello again, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are. So good to have you back with us again. And of course, our beautiful Jessie. How are you, lovely? How's it going there?
Doing very well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So, we are going to just have some Q&A today. Just, I know last week we wanted to sort of ask some questions. And I really loved our show last week, by the way. It was very, all this nonsense and this whatever.
Yeah.
It was great. Thank you so much for that. So we've got a couple of viewers that have sent in questions. And if there's any of the viewers out there, hang on, I'm just going to quickly do what I've just learned how to do and see the live questions at the same time. It's very impressive. I can't actually believe myself that I can actually and then just see if there's any questions that you guys might have for Jessie today that she can answer. Okay.
Right. Don't ask the questions I can't answer.
And absolutely. But if she can't answer it, she'll be very forthright. I have no doubt about that, and tell you straightforward that she cannot answer it. Not answer, Jessie, answer. Say answer.
Answer? I don't know if I can say answer. Answer. Yes,
I had to think.
answer. I guess that's like the, Norwegian, Scandinavian, German in me. Answer.
I think
How
when
do
we
you say answer? No, I'm just kidding.
answer, yeah, absolutely. It's like Tom is not allowed to say laugh, he must say laugh. You must say answer, not answer. And I think we must teach you guys Afrikaans words. So how about we do that right now? Say more, say Afrika. Say it.
I can't even repeat that, but
Oh
no,
yeah, say
I can give a quick, Minnesotan lesson, yeah, there, hey, sure, you betcha. So,
that sounds wonderful, by the way. What does that mean? Anything I should know about?
yeah, it means you're in agreement. Yeah, sure, hey, there, you betcha. They say it
Uh,
after everything. So it's like the long way of saying yes, I guess.
but it's nice. It's nice. It's nice to have these little sayings from wherever they come. They just kind of make sense, especially with these
Right?
languages. Well, before we get started, is there anything you doing at the moment? Anything you? Where are you
Yeah.
at? Happening? You want to maybe just share with our viewers before we go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got a lot of big stuff going on. So I know last week I had mentioned, so if people can just keep in prayer, I'm thinking about starting my own show, and it won't take away from your spot, Shanty. So
I'd be
just be in
mortified
prayer
if you
for that.
decided to abandon us little mere
I
Africans here
wouldn't.
on the southern tip of the globe.
You'd like come all the way from the globe. You'd find a way to open those portals and come.
Oh, you betcha. You betcha. If there's anything that'll inspire me to teleport and
Right.
crash land on your table, that'd be it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Glass.
so we've got that, but I'm doing a lot more teachings and more focus. So, we're spending some time with some specialized prayer groups right now. Helping people grow in intercessory prayer as well as warfare prayer. And we've got some pastors we're supporting and some military right now with special forces. So just be in prayer as we continue to do stuff there in those areas. And then, as always, I'm still working on getting my website up and going for illuminatethedarkness.com. And we've got a bunch of great stuff on there. That's our new website. We still have our old one, which is illuminatethedarkness.online. But the .com one now is going to focus on our four main project areas, which are, the champions, the veterans, the survivors, and then the Anointing Project and the Netherlands. So we're just, coordinating, getting everything set up for that and getting that in order. And then I'll also have on there like a link to my books that are on Amazon right now. So, and a link to my libertystand.com. So I am still participating in that, and I encourage anybody who wants to help out. We so far I think we've got 4 vets and some survivors on there. So donations that come in, and I would just encourage people, if you're interested in mylibertystand.com, maybe just email me, and the email is my last name, CZE, B as in boy, OTARJ @gmail.com, and just email in there, my liberty, and then I'll have somebody reach out and contact you. But we're taking donations for that, and then those funds completely go to help provide household items and needs on a monthly basis for our veterans and survivors who are more need long-term help and care with some of their financial situations. So, yeah.
Wow. As always, reaching out and doing beautiful things. So wish you well with that. And
Yeah, it's
lots of
going really
things.
well. So,
And I am so excited for your new channel. I have to tell you, I have no doubt that that's where I see you going. It's
right.
just beautiful. And I'm sure God is leading you as well as all your beautiful viewers there, my
Yeah.
opinion. But I look forward to watching that. I think it's going to be amazing. And I think it's not a moment too soon either. But
Yeah.
very happy that you aren't going to be abandoning us and jumping Africa.
Not at all. So,
Anyway, okay, well, we've got a few questions here. So what I'd like to ask you from one of the first questions is a question on John of God. I know that we have we have touched on him before, but I know that over time there have been quite a few viewers that have asked about John of God. So someone is saying, yeah, I was watching a bit of a documentary that's on Netflix, and he did seem to have actual powers to heal. But there was also a lot of dark stuff going on, and I wondered what Jessie's take on all of that is with
yeah.
John of God.
So, I guess my caution would be for people to read through in Scripture the book of Matthew, as well as the book of Revelations. And it talks about in the last days that we will have false prophets and false Christs arise. And so, how do we know those individuals? They proclaim kind of this godlike status or elevate themselves. Some of them outright proclaim that they are God or they are Christ come in the flesh. And, Scripture tells us that when the Lord returns a second time, that literally, we're not gonna miss it. It says that the heavens are going to be rolled back like a scroll, and we're going to see him coming riding on a white horse. So, if you don't see like this, I imagine it as kind of like this, like, and all the angels are singing, the clouds are being moved, and you are going to be directed at looking up, and you're going to see him come riding on a horse in the sky. So it's pretty clear about how we can know that. So, if an individual then is proclaiming these signs, these miracles, and I believe there is validation. There's enough people who've come forward who are able to prove that they have been healed by this man. The caution in that is that if they're not giving the glory to God in their healing, then you have to ask, what is the source that they're using? The fact that, a lot of people feel kind of this darkness, and there's not like a good feeling from some of the reports I've heard, you know, like they've sought out that healing, they've received it, but then they kind of have this, you know, uneasy feeling about things. So that kind of tells you that it's probably not a good source that he's using. You know, we know in scripture that angels, demons, they do have the ability to extend healing to us. So, you know, I guess that's kind of, I just have a lot of cautions. It's good to ask questions. It's good to evaluate. You know, definitely if you're going to somebody for healing, even if it's a regular medical doctor, if you're leaving that visit not feeling good, not having a peace, you know, you're really leery, I would encourage you to not continue to seek that individual to help you in the healing process. So that would kind of be my advice. And, you know, I don't personally know where he stands. It doesn't seem like he, you know, is coming at it from a Christian standpoint or relationship with God, you know, so I do believe that he's using alternative sources of healing.
Isn't he quite strongly affiliated with Oprah? And I seem to have that memory that she spent a lot of time with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm also just see, one of the, and as I just read a comment here from Erin, I was about to ask you the same thing, because I also remember reading about it a while ago that he'd also been convicted, or at least
several
of
several sex crimes, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so that, you know, that definitely, you know, when you look at the fact that Oprah has really promoted him and encouraged people to go see him, you know, the question is, did she know that there's sexual things involved with this individual? You know, chances are, as much as she was invested in his work, I don't think there's a way that she didn't know he was involved in forms of sexual grooming and sexual, you know, we'll just say misguidedness, but
shenanigans. Let's just say shenanigans.
yeah. Yeah,
That's
I
all
think, you know, he basically was trying to traffic women and
well, I'm pretty sure that was their business. I mean, if we understand what Madame O's business here in South Africa has been for such a long time with her schools and
right.
things, I've heard several survivors speak about her as being one of the abusers as well in the system.
Right.
So I have
we brought out a lot about Oprah, that, you know, definitely she was a high priestess under Gloria Vanderbilt. And, you know, she worked directly under Soros, which we know, you know, he was a Nazi. And then, you know, we kind of know where their positions go as they get higher in levels. Excuse me. You know, she declared in, I think it was May of 2020, when her and we'll just say Obama, you know, did a graduation ceremony for graduates in high school. The funding for that came from Soros, and they gave out mass amounts of money out of, you know, a special education account that Soros has. But really, what was happening there was that, you know, Obama and Oprah were given the headship over that educational account Soros had, and that came as Obama took his position as the phoenix of the council. So when they take their new positions, they declare their humanitarian efforts and make it public. So that's what him and Oprah were doing, was that they were declaring, you know, their humanitarian effort with the schools and education and with those funds, which, you know, I believe that, you know, there's probably documentation out there that show you know, the connection of Oprah using those funds with her schools there in South Africa as well. And we've proposed even that, you know, I believe that there was breeder programs in those schools, that they were, you know, those private schools often can become places where, you know, girls are gone, they're, you know, they're gone all year. And the way that those programs work is usually they'll impregnate the girls during one of the equinoxes, either the spring or the fall, and then they'll induce the babies early around the 5 or 6 month period. And you know, nobody ever knows that those girls were even pregnant. So I believe that that's what's really been happening with her schools.
Yeah, there was one account that they covered up where one girl arrived at the school with a dead baby in her bag. There was one of those accounts that they covered up, so
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
A lot of sexual abuse scandals from the staff and amongst the students as well. So that's just what mainstream media got hold of. And as we know by now, that's probably not even really what happened, because mainstream media just tells whatever story they wish to tell. You know, clearly something had to be said, so they just concocted a story. Anyway. Next question here. Project Reject. You know anything about Project
Reject?
Jessie, you should do a show about Playboy. The first mansion was in Chicago. Ronald Reagan's son worked for Playboy in CA. Many politicians had club cards. I wonder why no one talks about it. A lot coming out.
I don't know the connection between that and Project Reject. I don't know anything about that project, but I do know about some stuff about the Playboy Mansion and, you know, Hugh Hefner and a lot of individuals who have been engaged in that world and that sex industry. There's definitely occultic ties in the system with Hugh Hefner. He was one of the high priests of the region, and you know, had a lot of high connections with leaders, and we'll say world leaders and royalty, and both men and women. So, excuse me.
Those Playboy bunnies, those girls in there. Do you think all of them have been through the program, I would imagine some kind of beta sex kitty program?
Yeah, the beta kitty sex slave. I do believe so. It's a variant of the program. One, because, you know, usually how that program runs is that, you know, the girls will have some sort of cover life, and then their status will be shown, you know, kind of through that cover life. If they're high end, you know, catering to the high level business world elites, you know, they're going to have a cover usually of a business person or a woman who, you know, is an assistant or always traveling with other business people. Otherwise, you know, they'll have the Hollywood cover, the Disney cover, the music cover as a song artist, and, you know, there'll be different types of clothing that they'll wear, colored clothing, or there'll always be a signifier that will distinguish, you know, what level they are. In the old days in Hollywood, you would see a lot of the female stars that would wear diamond jewelry, whether it was like a pin with diamonds or things like that, and that would be the indicator that, you know, that they were a beta kitty sex slave. So, you know, we see the same thing today, whether it's tattoos or certain marks on their body. There's some sort of indicator so that the elite men know, you know, is that one of the girls that caters to my level, or is that not one that I can approach? And so, you know, I think it's the same way you see kind of that hierarchy distinguishing that's almost like the old, you know, Chinese emperor concubine setup where, you know, even in this Playboy world, you have the top women who are kind of like the madams who are running the show. All the other girls report to them. You know, they decide, you know, where they can go, what they can do, you know, how much they're working, how much they're not working, who they get to be introduced to. So we kind of see very similar things in both those worlds.
When you say they wear a diamond pin or some other type of, I would imagine it has to be a bling bling thing. As an identifier of what level they cater to. Would the size of the diamond, I'm interested to know about that. I mean, would it be the size of the diamond, the cut of the diamond? Would it be a pendant or a brooch or a ring? What would be the identifying factors?
Yeah, I mean, it can be anything. You know, it can be rings. Nowadays, what I see more is the clothing that will have the diamonds embedded in it. So I always forget his name. You know, they just came out with Megan Fox, but there's a guy who he's always wearing bling bling diamonds all over his shirts. They come out as vampires, you know. Well, I guess they haven't technically said they're vampires, but they drink blood, each other's blood in ritual. But basically, you know, his clothing, all the diamonds and stuff that he wears, like, shows that he's this high-end, you know, engages in sexual shenanigans, I would propose. So, so it can be anything. You know, it just depends on the levels.
Okay.
You know, like, yeah, it could be certain tattoos, certain marks that they have. And it's a pretty vast world. Yeah, it's like hard to get into all the little details about, you know, how to classify each of those, you know, sex slaves or
yeah, they obviously all have their own little way of doing it. You would obviously just identify with the main ones. In recent months, there's been suddenly after Hugh Hefner's death, who also lived to be the ripe old age of 90 something. No doubt, I'm pretty certain that he would have partaken in some juicy chrome rituals and things as well, right? If he was involved that much, and obviously he must have been high level because he was a very prominent figure and really got whatever he wanted in that way. There's a lot of negative publicity about him now, though, and a lot of the girls are starting to speak up about what he went through or what they went through, you know, the drugs that he made them take and the sexual stuff. And what do you make about that? Do you think that is just sour grapes, as a lot of people are accusing them of? I mean, firstly, I don't agree with that. I think a lot of women who go into these situations are trafficked. There to begin with, they are groomed. They are very harshly judged by the public and are being said, oh, well, she chose it. She was after it for the money, this, that, the next thing. But without realizing, in my opinion, probably nearly 100% of these girls that are in these situations are groomed. They are abused from a very young age. They are part of the child porn industry. They are then groomed to become these little bunny girls who waltz around with little ears on and say, are basically there to please every whimsical of every man that walks in there. So no normal woman in her normal mind does that. Let's just understand, you know, Most women are very feisty and they're very protective of their sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to understand that these women, in my opinion, that have been the bunny girls and stuff, I don't know what else, what other caliber
Right.
they were, have been groomed. So
Yeah.
do you think this is a part of the big reveal, revealing you, Hefner, as to the
I do feel that will be part of it, and showing, you know, really all that was going on with that. And I too, I feel like the life of those the bunny girls is very similar to hierarchy children. You know, a lot of the hierarchy kids are bred and groomed, you know, to marry into elite families. Yet within that family that they marry, you know, they know that their men are going to be engaging in sexual activity with other women. And, you know, let me take that back. They may not know when they're first getting married, you know, they grow up feeling and thinking that, hey, you know, I'm going to meet that man who's going to love me. Then they get into that relationship and they find out that it's not what they thought it was. And, you know, I think the same thing with these bunny girls, that they get into that relationship, into that job, you know, they're promised that it's going to be something good. You know, they're taught to use their sexuality as something that's for sale. And, you know, at first they're treated, you know, really well, or, you know, they find themselves with, you know, these overpowering tyrannical men who are abusive straight from the start. And out of fear, you know, they're told to take their clothes off and get in there and do their job, you know, and they're kind of strong armed into it. And very quickly they learn that it's a world where if they, you know, do what they're told to do, they prosper the majority of the time. And, you know, it's such a random world. Like, even, you know, in my world as a hierarchy kid, you know, I could be doing exactly what I was told to do, and there would still be consequences, horrific consequences. And that would just be to remind me that I needed to, you know, always do what I was told to do. So, you know, this is the same type of world that these women live in, that, you know, it's a world of fear and, you know, deep depression. And, you know, a lot of those feelings get chucked out the window, because if you even go down that road of sadness or depression, you know your career's over, your job's over, and you're going to be tossed out in the street. And because you're black, we'll just say blackballed, which is their way of, you know, making it so you can't get work anywhere. You know, they stay in it because they have no other option or choice. And, you know, I think that there's that part of deception where, you know, they try to embrace the pain and the hurt, you know, by saying things like, oh, well, I want this, I enjoy this, I like this, you know, Hugh's a peach. Well, we all know he wasn't a peach, you know. He was a very cruel old ornery guy. And I feel really bad for any woman who was stuck there with him, and who knows really the deep dark secrets of, you know, the sickness of his lust. And, you know, I'm certain there were satanic ritual things involved, and adrenochrome. So, you know, that's a very dark, sick world that they live in.
Someone was just saying, sorry, Jessie, there's tunnels under Playboy Mansion leading to Bill Cosby's house, amongst others. So that would make sense. I would imagine definitely there would be tunnels under the Playboy Mansion, right? It makes perfect sense, because it's really all about sex trafficking, human trafficking.
Right.
You know, which again, I mean, extends into the porn industry, because how many, I mean, if we look at Madison's story, And I know another one that I followed quite extensively. I haven't seen her recently on Twitter is Jenna Jameson, who's a very well-known porn actress and also trafficked. So, you know, any person who watches porn and gets their rocks off by what they're seeing and doesn't give a second thought as to where those women are coming from, what their background is, what they've been forced to do, that I would imagine must be the quickest turn off for anyone. And not just the women, I'm sure the men as well. I'm sure those men in the porn industry have also been trafficked in the system. They've also been you know, groomed and done whatever. So we've got to start looking at these things with different eyes. You know, we have to start understanding the stories behind these lusty, and I'm not just talking sexual lust, I'm talking vanity.
Bloodlust. Yeah, vanity, bloodlust.
Absolutely. All our, what is one of the 7 deadly sins? Isn't that lust? Yeah, those lusty things. You know, we have to realize that, you know, buying a gram of cocaine on a Friday night to go party with your friends, from what I've been told, is not just that a lot of people seem to think it is. There's often rituals involved. The amount of child trafficking, the amount of human sacrifice that goes on for that industry to thrive is horrific. You know? So we really need to think about what we support. We can't just blindly do these things anymore, right? And especially Playboy. I mean, Playboy Mansion has been glamorized for decades. Since I was born, Playboy Mansion was a...
The sprays, you've got the sprays, you've got the whole brand. You've got like aftershave sprays, the magazines, clothing range. I mean,
and when you buy a Playboy deodorant, you're supporting that industry.
Right.
Got to consider that. It's amazing. I mean, really, you know, and it really has, you know, our choices have so many consequences, good and bad. So when we really think about the choices we make, and we have to understand it all has a ripple effect, you know, choice we make has a knock-on effect to something else, and the choice we make has the ability to have a positive or a negative effect, knowingly and unknowingly. But yet you can't ignore the fact that either way we remain responsible on a whole planetary level. We are all responsible for what's going on here through the choices we make, actually, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, okay. Next question. I don't know, is there anything more that you'd like to say?
Somebody just said follow the white rabbit. Seeing that Playboy as a white rabbit, I thought like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And also just to add, it's just like the Freemasons and all these organizations, they lure us in or lure people in by making promises. It's all good. It's for the better of the world. Your life is going to change. And as soon as you're so far in it, then suddenly, before you see it, you're hooked, you're in it, you're captive. So it's very interesting to see that it's the same techniques like the Freemasons as well. So.
Okay, it wasn't Project Reject, obviously. It was obviously the person who's...
his name is Project Reject.
Oh, okay. I was like, I haven't heard of that project, especially in regards to you know, Hugh Hefner. So
yeah. Oh, Shanti is frozen. But yeah, the white rabbit is interesting.
Well, I'm glad we figured that out, that was their name. I was like, I'm not familiar with that one at all.
Yeah, it's crazy. And if you just think about it, since they started merchandising their product, a lot of teenagers like to buy the sprays, and it's like they make Playboy magazines not too sexual, but they brought it in, so they really infiltrated young minds with that product. I mean, I was obviously, you know, you have to be in with the boys. You got to play first
Right.
team rugby. You got to, you know, be cool. And yeah, it's crazy. No, it's
Yeah, it is very crazy. And I see there's a lot of stores now too who are carrying their products and stuff. So they're, you know, it's like we're having to literally walk out of stores, you know, and not support them because they're selling t-shirts or things with that printed bunny on it.
yeah, it's
Oh.
crazy because I enjoyed Disney. I enjoyed there was one spray that they made that was my favorite. So, and I must say, since luckily I've been doing my own healing and clearing my own closets out for many years now, and especially since we met you on this show and revealing all this stuff, I could really see why I took 10 years to clean out my closet, because there's so much programming. If you just look at Disney, how much programming for me myself, and it's crazy. So if we're only starting to wake up and only starting the healing right now, just imagine how many layers everybody, this whole world needs to clean out. It's
Right.
insane.
Sorry, guys.
We were
My
talking about
internet-
cleaning out Morné's closet, Chantelle.
Which you
I'm
will
very
all
happy to hear that. Can you get him to clean out his closet, Jess? I'm happy.
He admitted it online, so that was a good thing.
Well, Shanti,
No, I
you
think
supposed to know about it because you helped me clean out my closet.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know how much you heard about the previous question I was asking, but I'll start it again. What are the mother goddesses, and do they also report directly to the demon generals? Where in the system do they fall? Are they high priestesses? Do they follow the same ranking as the mothers of darkness, which is the crone, mother, and maiden? She says, I think we may have addressed this already. We've addressed some aspects of this, but we haven't actually addressed this question on here yet. So have you any feedback on that?
Yeah, they do have that same hierarchy structure. So usually you will have a trio of women that are overseeing a coven. You know, so think about it regently. Like these are the women who are running the covens by regent and who are in charge of other, we'll say witches. Usually they will run that coven hand in hand with a high-level warlock or druid. And with the mother goddesses, you know, there will be one that is elevated over the others. Usually she is seen as the crone, and then she will have a maiden who are kind of supporting with her. Sometimes those women will go by the title mothers as well. You also have in a regent one other group of women that in the system who are also going to be known as mothers, and those are going to be the dragon's wives. I'm going to put it that way for a little intrigue. So I encourage people to look into the KKK. You'll hear
hang
terms.
on. I think we're onto something right now. Okay, wow, very interesting. I'd love to hear more about that. Is that a question? Is that a topic for now, or should we keep that for later?
Yeah, no, I'll blend it in here. So, yeah, so you'll usually see the mother goddesses working with behind the scenes these other mothers, and they will go by, you know, that term, but they'll be connected to the local dens, and you know, dragons is a term for the heads of the KKK. Usually they will be in law enforcement, judges, different men in the community who hold those positions. And so when they're talking in code about each other, you know, they won't usually do it publicly, but the people underneath will know when they're talking about that individual. You know, they'll just say they're going to go meet with the dragon or with the Dragon Mother, things like that. And if you're in the KKK, you know who they're talking about. So yeah, so there's several that lose that or use that term mothers loosely because of their position title, but it's very different. It's their jurisdiction is at a regional level versus the Mothers of Darkness. Their jurisdiction is international and based on quadrants, both in the US and international. And they work directly with the Satanic Council. So the mother goddesses usually are never going to meet with a council member. If there's an issue or problem, they're going to bring it to their quadrant leader, interface person, who's going to be a high priest or priestess. If it's a severe matter, they may even get to go before a grand high priest or priestess, but usually they would never get to even see or be in the same room with a Mother of Darkness. So.
Okay, wow. Now that has opened up just, and I want to just tell the viewers, we're going to end at 2:30 of my time, so we're going to keep it to an hour because Jess is coming on to solutions after this. So we're going to be discussing an interesting topic on solutions as well, how to spot the infiltrators, which I think is so crucial at this time, and not just maybe in your family, in your community, in your church, whatever it might be, but also a lot of these people are planted in our as healer. No, I don't know about healers, but therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, they're actually planted in these positions by the system. And literally, instead of helping many of the overcomers and survivors, they literally reprogram them and put them straight back into the system again. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that, which is why I'm not going to keep it for too long. On these double sessions, we keep it for an hour each. I know Jessie very generously often goes over with us. But the last question I'm going to have for you for today then, Jess, and there's a lot more, so I think we can even have another show next week with some of the questions, because there's some great ones here. But I would like to know, and I've never heard this actually being addressed, how does the KKK, and is it the Ku Klux Klan or the Klu Klux Klan? Is it Ku or Klu?
Klu. KLU.
And Klu Klux.
Right.
Also nothing. So it's Ku Klux Klan.
Correct.
Okay. How do they fit in? Where in the system do they belong? What do they fall under? I mean, who are they? What is their secret society that they subscribe to? That I think could be quite interesting.
Yeah, I guess they'd be considered one of the organizations that, as people are brought into the system, they're literally raised up to take some of these positions that the system needs. So their position directly interfaces with several of the different departments in the system. So they're going to affiliate themselves with one of the departments. Usually it's the Masonic branch, because you'll have a lot of the men who are in the Ku Klux Klan will somehow be connected to the judicial system within their region. So, there'll be law enforcement, there'll be judges, there'll be police officers, prison guards, wardens of prisons. So they'll strategically put themselves in that position or be chosen and raised for that position. And, what do they kind of run or oversee? I think it's a lot of the trafficking, the drug running, the alcohol, the sex, the porn trafficking. So, they're going to be the ones that, they'll know the individuals who, are transporting products coming in and out. They're going to be checking the quality. They're going to be dealing with, if it's a drug dealer, they're going to keep that person kind of under control, make sure they're not skimming money off the top. They're going to make sure that money's getting back to whoever that high priest in that area, who's running that operation. So they'll kind of, make sure all the affairs are in order and kind of, I don't even know what that job would be, just they manage the departments and the services the departments offer. So that's probably the best way to describe it. And not a lot of people understand that about the KKK. They think that it was just an organization that, was against Blacks or African Americans, that they, are racist and trying to, make it a white man's society. But really, there's direct connections with the Nazis as well as the mafia. And, even individuals like Anton LaVey was very, very interconnected between both the mafia and the KKK in the Chicago areas. And, so both will work hand in hand, and the KKK tends to be more of the extended rural arm of the mafia. But I believe that there were a lot of interconnections between those two groups and how they run things. So
how interesting, because it's true what you say. One just thinks that they're these racists who wear funny white hats and do disgusting things. But it would make sense because they obviously have this sense of white supremacy. So that is very Nazi, neo-Nazi, whichever. So it wouldn't surprise me if they are even the fathers of the Nazis, right? I mean, were they, how long have they been around, the KKK?
For a long time. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
I think the Nazis were first, but I believe that they were, people who, once they were coming into America, they kind of split the group up so that people didn't recognize the Nazis in another form. And they do, they live that cover life. A lot of them will present themselves as Christians. So you do have some interesting, I don't know what to call it, but interesting things between the mafia and the KKK, because with their cover lives, usually they are very grounded in churches. They're high upstanding members in their Christian communities. And, everything that they do is done under the veil of a mask, hidden, like, they don't go out advertising that they're part of these groups. So it does get very, very interesting.
Very, very interesting indeed, because naturally, I mean, as you say, they don't go out advertising what they do and who they are. Interested to know, is there a particular, let's say, mind control program within the system that is used to program them to be so racist, that they really hate someone else so much because their skin color is different, that they actually have to do the most obscene torturing just because it's another race? On another level, I can understand them all in the system drinking blood and having adreno, because that's just how they get their power. But is there a particular program that particularly works with, let's say, white supremacy, hating another race for being a different color? Morné, I think your sound is on.
Yeah, I think definitely there is. I experienced some of that as a child too, where, I think it's just embedded in, we'll just say the hierarchy parents, that, you know, they're taught to not interact with other races unless they have to. You know, and a lot of it is verbal and emotional. So I can remember as a kid, you know, I wanted to have, I think it was a sewing store we were in, and there was this cloth that you could basically cut out the little doll and make your own doll with, but I had the doll already printed on the cloth. And so, like, I had got my mom to buy that. I was looking forward to that project. And then my proctor came over, and my goodness, like, you know, she took that cloth and ripped it to shreds, threw it in the garbage, and the stuff that spewed out of her mouth, you know, was just so nasty. You know, and I can remember that, you know, she'd even do that in real life if I tried to make friends with, you know, a child of a different color. You know, it was like, no, you can't interact with that person. They're below us. They're no good. They're an animal. You know, and I'd watch as they died in some horrific way, you know, and there was just no mercy, no grace. You know, they do treat those individuals like animals. And so I think that a lot of that, you know, just that verbal, emotional abuse that, you know, it's like when they react so negatively, you know, to a hierarchy child for, you know, their natural human instinct, which is to love, to, you know, draw close together, to get to know that person. And when they, you know, when the person doing the training, whether it's the parent or a teacher, when they give that negative reaction that's violent, you know, it causes that fear where then, you know, you automatically will protect yourself and you just won't engage with those people. But I watched, you know, I mean, I had friends that I would build secret relationships with, and, you know, they would run them out of town. They would do horrible stuff to these families. You know, so it gets interesting. Usually they're more inclined to the Oriental. I don't know why that is, but, you know, definitely there has been things against, you know, the darker skinned people, whether it's Nigerian, Somalian.
In fact,
Yeah.
as you're speaking now, I remember a good few months ago, a lady contacted me, and her parents were part of the original slave programming.
Wow.
And that was something that I hadn't heard about before. So that is pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That there was that original slave programming, you know, the whipping, the cowering, that, and I'm sure if you're looking at it, I mean, that would have been, they would have probably programmed those people, the slaves, for the benefit
Mm-hmm.
of the KKK, right? There has to be the one that the opposing one, the counterpart of that. So the victim and the villain. Wow.
Yeah.
Seriously, the more I hear these things and the more I hear, it's just insane how rotten the world is. But, you know, we understand that Lucifer was given domain over the earth. So there's a lot of, and that's why I say, so just that in itself should tell us enough, right? That Lucifer currently has domain over earth, currently being the operative word. Which means that, of course, all Lucifer's top generals are going to be in the highest and the most powerful positions on this planet to carry out that will. So it is up to us to shine light on that. That's all we can do. We can't fight them with other things. They've got too much going on here. Really, their technology is super advanced. We just have to be in our strongest spirit, right? And just be aligned with God and just like we've never been in our lives before. That's for sure. Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot that's surfacing. And, you know, it's, as I said, just like now with the KKK, they're not just a bunch of radical racists. They are very much entrenched and part of this well-oiled system that's been running for such a long time. It's like, where do these tentacles ever end? Which is interesting times indeed, Jess.
Yeah. And they don't even all know, you know, the majority of them have no clue that they're all part of the same organization. You know, they all got their little piece in the system, and, you know, they truly believe, you know, even a lot of the mafia, you know, they're so ingrained in that, you know, Jesuit Catholic life of service. They, you know, go to mass, they confess their sins, they, you know, give their honor and respect to God. But they don't see that some of the people who are over them, you know, have made those pacts with Lucifer, and they're not told that. You know, so for them, they feel like they're, you know, good Christians living their life the best way that they can.
Absolutely.
And, you know, for the betterment of humanity. So it gets, you know, it's really interesting. All those interconnecting pieces of the deception and the lies that the enemy gets people involved in.
I just think of our culture here as well, the white culture in South Africa. Especially, and I'm going back to apartheid years, I grew up in apartheid. It was the way that it was when I was young. And it's amazing how many, and we talk again about the church always involved in this nonsense, right? Even the KKK guys, I mean, in their misguided way of thinking, they will go there, be these big Christians, and then by the same token, that same night, go and murder African people. Where do you even think that that's okay? That what you're doing is okay, to be giving your life to the Lord and what have you? But that's, and it was similar, yeah, and still is. You get these very staunch Christian conservative, and I'm not saying all Afrikaners, please, I'm not saying English people aren't the same, but especially you'll find that the Afrikaans and the German are very strongly linked. Yeah. So a lot of racism there. And you'll find they'll go to church on the Sunday and preach the Bible and do whatever. They come home, they kick the dog, they call their staff the K word, which I will not mention because I can go to jail for it in this country. And, you know, and just have this horrendous abuse for another colored person. And for me, it's like their fear of dark-skinned people must be so huge. So there must be something in dark-skinned people that is so powerful that they have to suppress it. Yeah. To such an extent that, I mean, if you're just going back to the KKK, hunting and what have you, even the original colonization here, where the Namibian, the Namas, the Hereros, the Bushman people were hunted by the British and the Dutch and what have you. They were hunted into virtual extinction like animals, you know. Right. Even if we're just looking at the AIDS zappity zip in the 80s, it was created to wipe out the African continent. That was its purpose. Why? Why do you think white people are superior to African? In my opinion, you've got to turn that upside down. We've got to realize African people have got the oldest DNA in the world, or colored people. So there's definitely lots of interesting historical events, I think, that we can uncover around that to see what their true fear is, because unless you're fearing something so enormously, you're not going to go to the lengths that you do to suppress it. Right. My opinion.
So true. Yeah.
Anyway, Jess, I'm going to ask you just to close off for us in prayer. unless you've got something else
Oh.
that you just want to say before. And then it's now 2:36 my time, so maybe half an hour, 3 o'clock my time, which will be 9 a.m. for you, right? So is it?
Yep.
And then we then log on over to Solutions channel, where we're going to be talking about how to spot an infiltrator, be it personally, emotionally, in your own personal journey, or in as a survivor or overcomer. Your therapist might be planted there. How do you spot these people, and how do we overcome that? Wonderful. Thank you, Jess. Anything else? Otherwise, you can close us in prayer.
No, let's close in prayer. Yeah.
Great.
So, Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this day and this time together. And thank you for the discussion that we can enter into, and the puzzle pieces that you give us to help make sense of the things that are going on around us. And I pray that as we do that, you would just create that awareness that we would all not be condoning the evil that's being done, but that we'd be able to approach it with wisdom and understanding, so that we can really bring healing to those who have been engaged or who have had to participate in that evil, Lord. And I ask that you would allow us to become those type of healing souls that would apply the balm to the wounds, that that instead of making deeper wounds, that our true desire would be to mend and to use the gifts and the abilities that you've given us to bring life and healing and restoration and newness to the lives of others. And we just pray that specifically for the children, Lord, that we would cast aside everything that could be damaging or harmful to them, and that our focus would just be their joy, their happiness, their life, that as they grow up as adults, they may be well versed in love and caring for one another, and giving their lives on behalf of each other, however that looks. So we thank you, Lord, for the blessing of this time together. And I just ask that you'd continue to bless Chantelle and Morné as they go forward, and bless all those who come on their show. In your name we ask, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Thank you,
We shall
Jess.
see you all in a half hour.
Indeed. Look forward to seeing
Or
you
actually 20 minutes now.
guys.
So
Yeah. If you haven't already, please give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. You know our channel's been taken down recently. So if you're watching this, please just press that like and subscribe button. Notifications, leave us a comment, whatever. We really just need to get our algorithms up again. Thank you, guys. God bless you all. Take good care.